The lesson that we're going to look at today is on converting from one type of unit to another. Now, this is going to be very important in our metric system, but also there's going to be times we use the English system and convert to the metric system or the other way around. So I'm going to start by showing you a conversion within the metric system. So let's say I have a measurement of 274 meters, and I want to convert that to kilometers. Now, I have a few ways that I can do this. Now, some of you may have learned something about moving decimal points, and that's perfectly acceptable if you understand that and can do that. But I want to show you something called a conversion factor. Now, I happen to know that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. And these two are equal to each other. Now, if I take two things that are equal to each other and I divide them, I get something called 1. And if I multiply by 1, I get the same thing. So I can write this as 1 kilometer over 1,000 meters, and that's equal to 1. I could also write 1,000 meters over 1 kilometer. Both of these two are equal to 1. Now, if I multiply this by one of these two values, I can convert from one unit to another. Now I'm going to start with the first one and show you how this works. So if I multiply this by 1 kilometer over 1,000 meters, I get 0.274 kilometers. My meters cancel out. So that works out fairly well. Okay, so this is the correct use of a conversion factor. Now what's nice is if you do happen to mess up, it will show you right there in the problem as you were looking at it. So here I have, again, 274 meters. And let's say I chose the wrong conversion factor. Let's see what happens when I multiply that. This is times 1,000 meters per kilometer. When I get my units, that's going to be meters squared per kilometer. And while we can have meters squared per kilometer, this really doesn't tell us anything. So this is not the conversion factor we're going to use. So as long as I know two things are equivalent, I can use those as a conversion factor. Now let's take a look at using this to convert between an English and a metric unit. Okay, so let's say I have 37.2 inches. I know we don't normally think of writing inches in decimals, but very often we're going to be doing that. We'll be using a decimal system. I could have said, a number of inches, but we'll work with that. 37.2 inches. How many centimeters is that? Well, I happen to know that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Now, this is actually an exact measurement. So 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters. This is the only English to convert to metric conversion that is really exact. That's the only one we're going to use that's exact. Everything else, we probably should pay attention to significant figures. But this particular one, this is an exact measurement. So we're going to use that. Okay, now how do I convert this? Now remember, I want to write a conversion factor, and I have inches here, so when I write my conversion factor, it's going to be one of these over the other. Now I can say, oh, hey, inches are there. 1 inch here. I'm going to put that on the bottom. That means 2.54 centimeters is on the top. And when I multiply that out, I am going to take my handy dandy calculatorial device. I've got a calculator here. 37.2 times 2.54, and I get the answer 94.488. Now, I'm not going to write 94.488. I'm going to put this down here because I didn't plan my board very well, but it's 94.5 centimeters. Why? This only has 3 significant figures. Even though these are exact conversions, I only had 3 significant figures in my initial measurement. I'm going to have 3 significant figures in my answer. So this is how we do conversions. Now, you might also recognize there are times where we're going to do it a little bit different. So, for example, So when asking the question, how many square feet are in a square meter, I need to understand a couple things. Now I'm going to show you how to use multiple conversion factors in here. Now, first of all, I could look up a conversion between feet and meters, but instead I am going to go from inches to feet, or from feet to inches, inches to centimeters, and then centimeters to meters, just to show you how this works. Now, I have a square meter. We're going to use the 3 significant figures for a square meter. Why? Because that's what I chose. So 1.00 meters squared. In order to convert that to centimeters, now I can try moving the decimal point, but I really need to know what I'm doing. But I happen to know that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Now this will convert and cancel one of the meters. Now I can do this twice, or I can square it. I'm going to write it twice this time, even though normally I would put squared down, but I wanted to make a point here. Okay, so in this case, this is meters squared, meters and meters. Those are going to cancel. So now I have centimeters. I need to convert that to inches. Okay, I know that there are 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch. And I'm going to do that twice. And then I need to convert from inches to feet. Okay. How many inches in a foot? Well, there's 12 inches in a foot. So 1 foot is 12 inches. So when I do this calculation, and I'm putting things in my calculator, do I really need to write down that I'm multiplying or dividing by 1? No. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply the numbers in the top and multiply the numbers in the bottom and divide. Now I can do that a number of ways. I'm going to use my parentheses on my calculator. So what I'm going to type in is I'm going to take 1, which is my initial value. If I had something besides 1, I would put something else in there. And I'm going to take that times 100 and take that times 100. And if I look, everything else on the top is 1. So I'm going to hit divide by, and then I'm going to open a parentheses on my calculator. And I have 2.54 times 2.54 times 12 times 12, and I'm going to close that out. And I find that my total answer here is going to be 10.8 square feet are in a square meter. Now that works out fairly simply. I could write it out differently. I could write out 1.00 meters squared times 100 centimeters per inch and square that, and 1 inch square that, and 1 foot is 12 inches. And square that, and I will get the same thing. I just need to know that I can put it in my calculator correctly and get the correct answer. So a lot of the problems that we're going to do in this class require us to convert from one thing to another. And there's a simpler way of doing conversions, but this way we're going to see and pay attention to the units. This is sometimes called the factor label method or dimensional analysis. It's going to be really important for us, especially when we start converting chemical quantities. So I want you to practice, even if you're used to doing it another way, practice doing your conversions this way, and it should make things simpler.